Yesterday, Dr. Christy Whitbeck filed a lawsuit against the Fort Bend Independent School District and trustees Sonia Jones and David Hamilton and former trustee Judy Day. In the suit, it's shown that the Board of Trustees breached the voluntary separation agreement that they had just entered into and then went on a campaign to defame, harass, and bully Dr. Whitbeck in a failed attempt to justify their actions. The VRA required that the board individually and collectively issue an agreed-upon press release and then not disparage Dr. Whitbeck after that. The defendants violated the agreement before the ink was even dry that night. The board acted to terminate or retire Dr. Whitbeck just a few months after voting 7-0 to extend her contract for 3 years and give her a pay raise. That was in July of 2023, and then forced her out in December of 2023. Dr. Whitbeck was a very popular superintendent, extremely well respected by faculty, parents, students at Fort Bend ISD and every district she has worked at for the past 4 decades. Her forced retirement was a complete shock to Dr. Whitbeck and came without notice or conversation, and to this day, Dr. Whitbeck does not know the reason why the board took this action. Defendant Jones stated at the very board meeting where they signed the VRA and stated from the dais, if we went one by one on what was talked about in closed session, number one, she would never work in education again. That was immediately after agreeing not to disparage this lady. Defendant Jones made this statement in open session at a board meeting knowing that multiple media outlets were present and that they would report on it, and they did. On December 18th and 19th of 2023, defendants Hamilton and Jones published and then republished false allegations that Dr. Whitbeck had made racist comments about defendant Hamilton. This was first lodged on a local radio show. Not satisfied with their defamation, the board went on to invent investigations into post-retirement issues on Dr. Whitbeck, alleging that she had lied about the bond issue they had just passed and that she intentionally withheld information from the board about an upcoming TEA takeover of Fort Bend ISD. That was completely false and defamatory. There was no investigation of Fort Bend ISD that was undergoing, and the board knew it because it had already been reported to them. Defendant Day at the same December 4th board meeting stated, some of us wanted to follow the legal rules and we do not want to disclose the legal discussion from closed session. I'm asking you to understand the truth. A lot of the time on the surface is not the same as the truth. This conduct and the remainder of the statements in the petition show a concerted effort by the defendants to defame, harass, and bully Dr. Whitbeck. Because of the contract that they entered, they were prohibited from making these statements, and quite frankly, any decent human being would not act the way these defendants have acted. In this suit, we're asking for damages arising from breach of contract and for the defamation of Dr. Whitbeck. If you have any questions, I'll take some. Yes?
What are we hoping to get out of the lawsuit?
Well, any lawsuit that you file is about money. I mean, you get damages. Nobody jumps up and says, oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. You sue them, you go to trial or mediation, and you get damages. And that's what this is about.
How much are y'all asking?
Well, that'll be determined. We don't have to plead that yet, and so the amount of damages will be the breach of contract damages, and you'll see that in the petition. And then the defamation, we'll have to gauge what that value is.
Dr.
Whitbeck.
Able to make any comment? I know the press release stated you've been through some tragedies in your life, but this is up there with some other things.
Scoot over here just a little bit.
Yeah, Dr. Whitbeck, if you could just talk about how all of this has impacted you. How has it changed your day-to-day life, the long-term impact?
Well, you alluded to the statement, and yes, I've had tragedy. I lost my husband in a car accident. I lost my son to a ruptured artery. I've had terrible things happen to me, but I would say this is the third worst. I actually stated that when my last time I spoke to the leadership of Fort Bend ISD, and you know, to be put through something like this when I would consider my career to be very strong, successful everywhere I've been. We all have challenges in education today, more than ever, but I'm proud of what I did. And it has just been heartbreaking. It's been difficult. It's I get sent things on Facebook or posts, and I'm appalled. And but you'll notice I've never really fought back. I've never done any of that. So.
And she asked them to stop. A year ago, a cease and desist letter was sent by another lawyer asking that they stop. And not only did they not stop, they doubled down, and they sent I don't know how to say what it was, but a horrible response back. Sorry, there you go, sarcastic response back, and continued. And so Dr. Whitbeck has done everything she can do to move past this. She agreed, even though she didn't know why they wanted her out, she agreed to voluntarily resign in the hopes that she could move on and do something else. And these board members and this board violated that agreement and have gone out of their way to ruin her career.
Dr. Whitbeck, were you ever on good terms with these three trustees? I know I think I interviewed you when you got the job and seemed to have an unanimous endorsement. So what went wrong?
Some of the trustees are not the same ones that were part of hiring. You know, there was some changes with that. Yes, I thought so. I have emails and I have documentation that would indicate yes from them. And
understand that the key element here is they had just voted 7-0 to extend her contract for 3 years and give her a pay raise, and then turned around 3 months later and took this action with no notice and no explanation. As we stand here right now, Dr. Whitbeck has no idea why this was done.
I never had a chance to meet with them. I never sat at the table and listened. I never got to that opportunity.
Have you been able to move on, or have these events, because your name's out there, if you Google your name, you see these things?
So I'll answer that. Dr. Whitbeck spends every day looking at posts and emails and statements made by this board attacking her for the last year, which is why she finally said, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to file this. I want to file a lawsuit. And so has she been able to move on? How do you move on past a concerted effort to attack your integrity and your career? And that's what she's working at. Yes, ma'am.
Can I ask you, what did you know anything about the projected bond shortfall around the time of your exit?
So the bond shortfall is a result of inflation, and period. And the board knows that. It's not something that you can gauge because you don't know what inflation is going to do. And we'll be showing that later. Did you have a question?
I was going to ask, is it more personal or performance?
We don't know the answer to that. Why they forced her out, we do not know. But there was never.
Once she left, they continued.
Oh, that's a good question. What you see here is, as soon as she was forced out, the community rose up. They went to the board meetings. They were objecting to this. And the board, in a failed attempt to justify their actions, has gone on this year-long campaign. They're trying to justify what they did.
When was the cease and desist letter filed?
I don't know the answer to that. Do you?
December of last year, right after.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
It's stated part of the lawsuit is to seek damages, but it's also part to clear your name and maybe unsully the reputation.
So, of course, when you file a lawsuit like this, you're expecting that when you get a judgment against them, that is the impetus that the public needs to know that this was all not true. Anybody else? All right. Thank you very much. Y'all have a good day. Let's go back up here.
Okay.
Oh, now? Okay. Come on. It's all right. Let's go.